Welcome back, everyone, to another installment of our Red Spotlight Shield recap, rewatch, commentary, reaction series, however you want it. I'm Alexis, and I'm joined today by David Francisco for our 8th installment here for Season 1, Episode 8, The Well of this wonderful show that we've been covering, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. As a reminder, of course, these episodes come out every single Friday in 2 versions on YouTube, which is a bit of a truncated version, but of course you have the clips from the actual episodes that you'll watch along with us as if it were a reaction. Also, an audio form, which is the entirety of the conversation available on our podcast feed, which should be in the show notes below on this video. And of course, David and I do a bunch of other podcasts in this network, which include Quest Center and Turn to Page, and of course the main Red Spotlight podcast, which we've just now recently finally got back to. We took a bit of a 4-week hiatus only because we were focusing on this new show. Also, everybody else is busy. But thankfully, we just, I think, did a really good show with Alexis Moretto talking about the crappy nature of the movie space right now. Mostly kind of negative stories, which wasn't negative enough because things came out after the fact that we're going to have to address pretty soon. But it was mostly revolving around a conversation on our feelings on the movie Challengers. And then there'll be a new one coming up in the coming weeks in regards to the new installment of the Planet of the Apes franchise. So those are our current other projects in the works. And as far as today is concerned, so again, as a reminder for people who are watching this for the first time, there is no pretense. This is a show for fans of this series that really want to interact with other fans that are quite knowledgeable on everything that happens and finding new things to appreciate about a show that perhaps we may not have realized before. And because while this is a discussion on the 8th episode of Season 1, there very well may be spoilers for literally every and all episodes of this show and characters, okay? So that's just kind of been our thing. And I'm happy to say that we've been having a really wonderful dialogue, not just amongst David and I, reliving the show, but also with all of you who are watching along with us and are taking in the time to actually put your thoughts in the comments page and, getting us to think of certain things and have an actual, existing body out there to interact with. And I actually want to start off this particular installment by, taking into account something that I can't necessarily take credit. Does part of me want to? Maybe. But I can't be too sure. So I am, very grateful for, some of the kind commentary that we've received, especially for some of the, I know in the first few installments, we were talking a lot about, a lot of the mirroring that's happening on the show. Particularly the Graviton, Coulson, Daisy thing that we've talked about already, and people commenting on our videos saying that they never looked at it that way before. Well, one of the ones that I had recently, and I can't recall if it was in the Girl in the Flower Dress or if it was in Fids. I don't remember which one it was, but I want to say maybe it may have. I don't think it was the Hub. I think it might have been Fids, or I can't even recall. What I am referring to is when I spoke up about, remembering how much of an out of left field decision it felt like when they decided to make May an empath. And while in my other rewatch of the show, I had recently seen Melinda, the season 2 episode, where we actually see what happened and how she got the name of the cavalry, which involved her having to, basically kill the little girl Katya. Because she was insane and she was causing, all these other agents and all these other people to kill on her behalf, but she herself, just by touching them. And then, of course, that May herself would end up getting, powers like that toward the end. I don't remember ever myself putting that together until I shared it with you guys on that episode. And interestingly, around the same time, I see a post go up on one of the Shield Reddits, and I'm like, for one, I'm happy to see I wasn't alone in thinking that, because it makes me feel like I'm not full of shit for like connecting these things together. And again, I want to be clear. Me saying that there's a connection there is not the same thing as me saying, like how people praise Kevin Feige for like, he knew it all along. I'm not saying that Jedmo, like, we're planning it from that moment that down the line at the end of the series, they were going to make May have abilities that mirrored the Inhuman that she killed. That wasn't a plan. Mm-hmm. That it just kind of materialized. And now I'm just realizing how kind of great of a twist it was in actually, because again, why give her these powers at the end of the series? I think we kind of caught on, even though it did feel strange, but we kind of we connected it in a different way. And I think it was the point was to make her come face to face with her emotions. That was the thematic aspect of it. But we didn't realize that 4 years ago at the time that there was a far deeper connection with those powers, considering they were the same abilities of the girl that she had to kill. Which is like so, and that's the thing that she felt the most guilty about, like for the rest of her life. So, the post that I am referring to, I actually shared with you, David, right? Was it yesterday? It may have been yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah.
Okay. So I, of course, frequent Reddit, as all insane individuals do. And I find something, and I'm like, what? And I just find the timing so interesting because we just talked about this. So the post comes from, that's funny, Troll of Truth. That's the name of the guy. And he posted, or he or she posted, May Full Circle Season 7 ? This is what they wrote. I just realized upon rewatch that the May getting her powers isn't, or May getting her powers isn't just a development because she used to be emotionless. It's full circle to her character because the little girl from season 2 had the same powers. This is a direct quote that Jiaying said about Katya. With one touch, she leached off emotions like a parasite. Sorry if I'm late to realizing this, but that's insane. I was whatever about May getting powers. Maybe I rolled a little bit thinking that it was a bit of a stretch, but in this context, I think it's genius. I do think that she might have been the most pivotal, and this is a little bit interesting, adding on to her role in the finale. She been the most pivotal in defeating the Chronicoms, and we also said this as well. In season 7, though, she helped to discover the invasion in the lighthouse and stop them from sneaking into the Zephyr. I would actually, that's fine and all, but I think to me, she was the most pivotal in defeat. And this person may have been saying, but I don't think they articulated it very well in this comment. But at the time, it was pretty obvious to us when we were analyzing the final episode, May using her new powers to give the Chronicoms empathy was just like, that was the character coming full circle. Mm-hmm. She was not defeating, I mean, yeah, she had a badass moment where she like knocked the hell out of Sybil, when she came off and the cavalry arrived. That's fun. Yeah. And that's, that was a great, moment. But she ended up proving to be among the most pivotal because she used her new empathic abilities to give her enemies emotions and thus laying down their weapons. And I think to me that part worked really well initially when we saw it, but now, having in this other context of like, because, I gotta be honest with you, when we were watching season 7, the last thing I was thinking about was anything happening in season 2. Yeah. Remembering like what happened, like, when a show gets to the 7th season, I mean, unless you like religiously watch the episode all the time and you memorize everything, you're not gonna catch on to these things. So I don't know. And is this all me like taking credit for this person? I don't want to, be that way. But this was a comment that was posted in the last 2 days. I don't know what that means, but technically speaking, I did have that thought first. That I know of, first of all, not maybe on the... clearly, I'm not the only one on the face of the planet that made that connection. I'm just saying, to me, in my limited circle of, sharing these kind of opinions together, this is the first that I see, as I mentioned, the first time this even occurs to me, and seeing this kind of occur to other people, perhaps as they're doing their own rewatches. David, I wanted to get your reaction when you saw this comment, and just what was going through your mind, and also how much of it do you actually like see the connection that was there?
I mean, it was pretty much 1-to-1.
Right?
Yeah, pretty much 1-to-1 to what you said and all that. But yeah, no, it's pretty cool that people are still making these connections in their rewatches and everything. It's if, this person didn't listen to us or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But it's really cool that people are able to make those kinds of connections like you are. Because I sure as hell I'm not making any of those connections. I'm just along for the ride, It's like, I love this movie. I love this movie. It's like, that's just me right there. But yeah, I thought it was really cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I gotta say, there's a lot of rewarding things about doing this rewatch series, but I think to me, loving this show even more and finding new things to love about it that didn't even occur to me before has to be, to me, like my favorite part of doing this. And I guess you're kind of forced to, because doing a show like this where you're literally watching every episode, you're kind of forced to look at it more closely. And I think to me, one of my other favorite pieces of doing this rewatch series is finding all those little motifs of music that I think if you only watch it one time, just fly over you and you never think about them. Mm-hmm. But the more you live with it and the more you watch it, the more it might actually stand out to you. You might appreciate how good it is. So I wanted to put that out there first and foremost. But we also have some comments, of course, that we should read from one of our recent, I believe, reactions. So the first one that I want to read, I thought it was hilarious. And you know the one at the very bottom, Silva Surfa saying that Joker is complete trash. I concur with you there. Look, Joker is a divisive movie, okay? There's a lot of controversy that came out when the movie was released, and I think ultimately the media kind of, as usual, missed the point of why it was kind of... first of all, I don't think the film really has that much substantive to say. To me, it felt like somebody was like... No, it felt like Todd Phillips watched The King of Comedy and Taxi Driver, two of Marty Scorsese's best movies, put them together and just put the Joker in it. And like, to me, it's like, I'm never offended when people like a movie. But I'm always offended when people like a movie to such a degree that in my view, so many other better options are just like left in the dust as if they never existed, okay? So in 2019, when Joker was hitting it big, nobody was talking about Dr. Sleep. And what an amazing movie that is. With Ewan McGregor. Mm-hmm. And had fucking Mike Flanagan perform a miracle in being able to deliver a sequel that works for both the Stanley Kubrick version of the story and the Stephen King version of the story. It was nothing short of a miracle. And the director's cut, if you haven't seen it, the 3-hour version is even better, if you can imagine, than that. So it's like, to me, people liking things never pisses me off. What pisses me off is when people like things in favor of other things that I feel are far better, you know? So, and at the same time, I felt Joker had a very muddled message. Personally, I don't think it was going for a message. I think it was just going for shock value, and people thought it was like, even Michael Moore thought that Joker was saying anything. And in my view, I'm like, the media, I think, grabbed onto something and was trying to somehow use it to this is getting into politics, and I don't want to get into there, but I felt like it was like trying to smear leftists and progressives by, jumping too much at the gun. And the thing about Joker is I don't think it has really an ideology. I think it was just speaking to a lot of like anger and dissatisfaction of a state that just doesn't function, much like ours doesn't function anymore. And as usual, it was enough of a blank canvas for anybody that watches the movie to basically just project whatever they think onto the movie itself. So it's like, also though, it's a bit much to give it 11 Academy Award nominations. That's the other part. I mean, it's bad enough that it was, appreciated and far more successful than anything that came out around it. But it was a fucking knife to the face of an insult to me that somehow received, even though it was just by one, more nominations than The Irishman. And so, again, if you happen to like the movie, as David does, I'm happy you do. I don't care if you liked it or not. It's always like, and again, this goes back to S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Like, why am I so protective and why am I so passionate about this show that we talk about? I always would have been regardless of it. I think it's amazing, but you have to understand that I'm far more like bullish on it and far more protective of it and always ready to, fight to the death for it because of the constant target it's had. Look at the reviews that we read for the last episode, David, on what was it, The Hub? Mm. You saw how pissed off I was getting just by reading it. And I'm like, and you yourself, I think, were upset because like those reviews are like not good. Yeah, they were not great overall. But again, overall, as a reminder, for those of you who are listening and watching, it's like, look, we can agree to disagree about anything and everything. That's personally fine. And again, if you feel like we go a little bit over the edge on some things, please feel free to communicate that thought to us. Believe me, me thinking that Joker isn't a good movie is not even, I feel, among my more controversial opinions that I've had on the show, or I think we'll ever have on the show, mind you. So there's that. But I and I'm sure you knew this as well. I laughed really hard when I saw that comment. I'm like, I at least I ain't alone in that little. I mean, it made $1 billion, so clearly I am not anywhere near the majority of the opinion of that film. And I know a lot of people looking forward to Joker Part 2 or Part Do, whatever it's called. Mm-hmm. I just know that I laughed so hard when people were like, bro, you're making a musical? Fuck you. I'm sorry. I was like, Anyway, that tangent aside, I don't know if you wanted to say anything. I was just
I like the Joker. I actually didn't like the Irishman. Sorry, but
hey,
and I'm excited that Joker 2 is a musical. I don't know why people were.
Oh,
mad
good
about
for
that.
you. Good for you. I'm happy.
To me, it makes complete sense that it is
I think
musical.
It's because you open yourself up to different kinds of movies, and I think you acknowledge that it was like a cool concept of it, right? I can't say the same can be said for many others. But David, The Irishman is a masterpiece. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. Just
I
mean, I like Martin Scorsese. I loved Killers of the Flower Moon. I mean, you can see
Flower Moon's better.
Flower Moon is better.
It's way better. I like The Irishman a lot, but Flower Moon is like, whoa. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's that. On that we can agree. Mm-hmm. Okay. Other comment by Silver Surfer? Unless you wanted to say which one it was or had a different thought that you wanted to add?
About what?
I thought we were done with that whole... Okay, I was moving on to the next one. Mm-hmm. Unless you wanted to read it. I was going to read the next one right now. By Silver Surfer.
You go ahead.
Okay. Greetings, fellow agents. Always good to see you. This post is about your comments about the YouTube personalities who hated Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Remember this always. Campea, Collider, Red Letter Media are all failed Hollywood actors and writers who desperately try to work on the Star Wars prequels and the MCU. That is something that our good friend Peter Martinez has said from day one. It's like they were fun personalities to watch and have fun, movie interactions. But ultimately, I think there's an argument that can be made that these people were not creating a net positive on the film discourse. Because ultimately, these people were only just, and to be fair, they sold themselves as like movie fans, not movie critics. So to be fair to Campea and his whole cohort, they were pretty clear about who and what they were from the beginning, Were they failed comedians and failed actors? Yeah. But they're there and they're doing what they can to make money, and I respect that, of course. That's not, me shaming them for that. That's just the reality of what it is. But it should, I think, really highlight the mistake that many people made in treating them as actual movie critics, which, again, most of them would often say they were not. But regardless of how many times they would say that they're not movie critics, all of their fans, which grew exponentially from 2013 to 2018-19, they ate that shit up. Like, a lot of their followers took what their personalities had to say as gospel. And part of that gospel was like, punching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the face. Because the thing is, they were all literally one big circle of friends. Were they all friendly? Yeah. Were they all friends? No. There was a lot of drama that came out years after the fact. But the point is, more or less, they all kind of had the same kind of opinions. That isn't to say that sometimes you and I don't share a lot of the same opinions. But when it comes to giving a show like S.H.I.E.L.D. any kind of coverage, it suffered. So I believe that's what this person was getting at. Silver Surfer was getting at this. He continues, or she continues. They had to resort to creating the modern toxic culture of YouTube as a fallback. The MCU was too popular to hate, so they jumped on hating Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I do think there is something to that. That is correct. The MCU is too popular to hate. Mm. And I'm not sure that's tied exclusively to hating S.H.I.E.L.D., but I do think hating Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. gave a lot of those people bonus points in saying that, yeah, I like the movies, but I'm not always like a Marvel shill. Like, I hate S.H.I.E.L.D. and I always will punch S.H.I.E.L.D. in the face. To me, that's what it came off of. But the overall point, the MCU is too popular to hate. I mean, yeah. Mm-hmm. If we look back at a lot of those critic scores and reviews for the MCU movies, were a lot of the movies that they made in the 2010s good? Yes. But very few were great. Mm-hmm. And when you take a step back, they had a lot of problems that were not apparent, at least to me, while I was watching them from movie to movie. But now with the benefit of years removed, I can look back and say, what the hell were some of these reviews thinking? Like, they got a pass because it was too popular, it made too much money, and most importantly of all, these people had nothing to benefit because of the success of the MCU. They directly profited from that. He called himself an old school dork, so I saw them as the posers that they are. And I think, to be fair, that's a harsh thing to say, but not untrue. Considering what's come to light, plenty of those personalities were posers. Their opinion is irrelevant. Only opinions to fellow fans are worthy to debate. Okay, you know what? In his view, and that's fair. Only the opinions of other fans of the show are worthy to even engage with. And that's true. What I will disagree slightly is their opinion wasn't irrelevant because their opinion became commonplace. They succeeded. Mm-hmm. Their opinion smothered everybody else's out of the water. Even IGN, after 5 seasons, stopped covering the show. Like, every year, it would be less publications watching the show. All these personalities, by season 2, no longer watched the show. So it created this environment where everybody just perceived Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as a big failure. Despite the fact, mind you, that it went all the way to 7 seasons and 136 episodes. How can that a failure be? So, interesting there. David, other comments? Unless you wanted to add on to this one.
Yeah, Jack Dubs added, do you remember Marvel Movie News on Popcorn Network? They spent an hour or so gushing about how great the last MCU movie was, how great the next MCU movie was going to be, generally kissing Foggy's ass, and in between all of that, had a little segregated section devoted to AOS, where the panel basically switched off, read their show notes, and let some guy in the sound booth talk about that week's episode for a couple of minutes. I don't remember this channel, but
I want to say that at some point I might have stumbled on to a few episodes of Marvel Movie News on the Popcorn Network. And I remember specifically when S.H.I.E.L.D. would come up, and this is what would happen. And this is what I say. Do you see how the show was treated? The show was evidently beneath the 4 main panelists to even bother talking. By the way, these panelists would, and this wouldn't be the only show, mind you. This would happen for a lot of other shows where because they had Marvel Movie News or whatever, or Marvel News in their name, they felt obligated to talk about the show. But at that point, nobody watched it anymore from their circles. So they had to literally, okay, oh shit, who watches that show anymore? We got to find somebody to watch. Okay, maybe this guy can talk about it. While the rest of us switch off, look at our phones, and like disengage from what's happening, we'll have some guy off camera talk about what happens. While everything else in the episode, we can just talk about. Do you see the double standard? Thank you, Jack Dubs, for pointing that out, because that was so infuriating. It was very infuriating. All of those years it kept happening. It's like everything else had a meaningful and devoted conversation to it, except this show. It was tough to be a S.H.I.E.L.D. fan. It really was. David, next comment.
Yeah. This is Silva Surfer again. I always have to bring up the actor who plays the fireman, Tony Diaz. He was a last minute hire, and due to budget restraints, he basically had one shot to do that scene with Clark Gregg. He listened to jazz music, got into the emotion of the character, and absolutely nailed that scene. It was the first scene that made me cry in the show, and it definitely wouldn't be the last one.
I love this comment because it brings another light, a spotlight onto something else that we don't discuss quite frequently, in that, there are a lot of actors out there that will never hit it big. And maybe all they will ever have are small roles like this, but we got to give credit where credit is due. I agree with this comment completely.
For sure.
The actor that played the Tony Diaz fireman guy had maybe a scene, but the scene that he shared with Greg was something special. And I think, to me, is one of the more memorable moments of the entire 7 years of this show. And then as an overall broader point, I do feel the casting director of the show, from the main major names that they would bring in, like Constance Zimmer or Powers Booth, even other people, of course. but to the extras, even the extras that would just like have a few lines here and there. I can rarely think of instances in which they have put certain faces in front of us, and that they didn't absolutely deliver on what they were needed to deliver in that scene. So, because the show has a long history of like minor characters as well, not just extras, but like, you know, we talked about Keller, who people forgot existed. There's like major minor characters and minor characters. There's Tess, that character that got killed in season 5 and then brought back to life through the Kree blood. But of course, maybe a reoccurring minor major character would be people like Piper and Davis. Other SHIELD agents who are around, but are very much clearly like a tier below our main cast members here.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I was actually really happy, though, that they kept bringing them back, because I was like, oh, maybe, like, there's not enough time for them to become major characters, but, like, I love that they keep bringing them up and they actually, like, do some important stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There was and I think that's also an example of, like, broadening out the mythology of the show, is that when you really begin to think about it, this had an extensive cast of characters to pick from. So much so that one of my small quibbles with the end of the series was, for me, being selfish, there would be so many opportunities to bring back a lot of old faces, like one last time. But of course, when you have too many faces, you can't really do that all that often. But yeah, you're right. There was even this other, I just noticed I would see many times. But some people, you just don't realize it as much. There was other agents like Agent Kwan or Agent O'Brien who rarely get lines, but have a few every now and then between seasons. Agent O'Brien actually is an agent that, according to the history of the show, goes way back to the point that he was there on that Bahrain cavalry mission, and then would later still be with SHIELD. We would see him tailing Fitz as he left SHIELD, in quotes, to, take Fury's toolbox to Coulson. There was a scene where he's banging on the door because Fitz is in the restroom and he's trying to, like, get out of there. But unfortunately, O'Brien ended up being one of those agents that met his end, in a way, when he got transformed into a primitive Inhuman at the end of season 3, when Hive brought that thing under the base that let out a smoke and a mist, and the agents were transforming into those primitives. So, and as a matter of fact, this, not for this one, but in the next one, episode 9, we're actually going to see the first appearance of one of those agents, and I'm wondering if you're going to catch it. So I'm not going to say it, but it'll be for the next episode. Because when in one of my previous rewatches, when I saw it, I'm like, is that what? I'm like, that's weird. But this is a show that does bring back some players, even when you're not necessarily that aware of them. But yes, I love this comment by Silva Surfer for sure.
Because we definitely didn't give him praise during our commentary, but for sure, he's right. That fireman did absolutely great.
Okay. All right, next one.
Yes, this one's... Wait. Oh, yeah. The Gary Marshall. Being English, one of the things that drew me to this show was the fact that there were not one, but 2 British characters. Side note, this could have been very different. See Lil's video? Lil's video on her being cast on the show, and I was content at them being the quirky scientist, the lab. Then this episode came along and blew the assumption out of the water, as both Lil and Lane acted their socks off. So many cool moments, but
Lil and Ian.
Oh, Ian, my bad. So many cool moments, but the way Lil says "please, sir" always breaks me.
So, Lil is Elizabeth Henstridge, the actress that plays Gemma Simmons here, and why she's referred to as Lil is that's the name of the show that she started on her YouTube channel. So what happened, and I thought this is awesome because, and this also should just show you what a complete lack of interest there was from the media at large that S.H.I.E.L.D. was even existing, much less that it was having its final season. But Lil, as she's known, Elizabeth Henstridge, took it upon herself to, and also we were trapped in COVID time, so there wasn't much the cast can do together. So what she did, and I thought to me, was like perhaps one of the most. It made the show more special. It made that final season more special because what happened was that Elizabeth Henstridge on her YouTube channel started this not watch along. I think it was more of a review, like an after show kind of show series for the final 13 episodes. What she would do is she would like maybe it was a watch along and then also after show, but it had the vibe of an after show because they were watching it, but they were talking about things that were happening. It wasn't a full on commentary with certain members of the cast who were special in those episodes, but then also writers, producers, and the directors themselves of those episodes would be invited to speak about how they would shoot certain things or what their thought process was for writing certain scenes. And you gotta keep in mind that as a mega fan like me, to have an experience like that where we're not just getting a show that's talking about it, but we're actually getting people who worked on the show to come on and talk about why they love what they did and how they contributed to this wonderful show was, I think to me, Elizabeth Henstridge single-handedly made the final season much more of an event because she did that. I don't think you ever watched any of those, but I sure as hell I'm going to tell you, they're well worth the watch. And when we get to the end of this, I would like for you to watch those because they are rich with information you had people who were on her show that, again, remember one of the final episodes, I think it was Brand New Day, was written by someone that was hired on earlier on as like a extra hand or something in the run of the series and had the opportunity to actually write an episode for the show. And he came on Elizabeth's YouTube after show thing and just discussed. It was, look, to me, it reminded me about why I love to talk about all the craft involving filmmaking. And I think, especially when it comes to broadcast TV like this, it's become increasingly rare to see and feel and hear what that world looks like from the people that actually worked in that whole situation. So I believe there was another comment that might allude to that later on.
Yeah, it's right on top of it.
Was it really?
Yeah, Elizabeth Henstridge started a YouTube channel when season 7 started airing and did watch-alongs to that season with cast and crew. Basically explaining what you said. But
there it is.
Yeah, and then it does also say she does bring up her scene with Samuel L. Jackson and reacting to screen tests amongst many others.
Yeah.
That's cool.
No, for sure. So I guess, he explained it himself. I didn't realize that comment was on this video, but there it is. But we should also mention another contingent of this comment, which was the fact that the show, although the media would never want to acknowledge it, had quite an international fandom. You know, I feel like because of how ignored it was, you would never know it. But remember what Parrot Analytics released years and years ago about how it was the most in-demand Marvel show across the planet. You could feel it very much at the time that the UK audience really took a liking to this show. Because I remember at the time that S.H.I.E.L.D. was airing, there were a lot of Doctor Who fans who would watch S.H.I.E.L.D. And honestly, if you like Doctor Who, as you and I do, then you'd like S.H.I.E.L.D. and vice versa. So, and I noticed that a lot of the reaction channels from people who would react to the show as it was airing, guess what? Surprise, surprise, were from the UK. And I do think, of course, the fact that Ian DeCasticker and Elizabeth Henstridge, who are English and Scottish, had a big part in that, I think. So we can't underestimate the value they had in keeping those characters included and on the show. But thank you, Gary Marshall, for that wonderful commentary. And we will be on the lookout. When I find things that I want David to react to, we will make sure to do that. All right, next.
Yeah. Ever since it was pointed out to me by a fellow fan, I have kind of fallen in love with the structure of the first half of the season 1. The first 3 episodes are devoted to team building, and then episodes 4 to 9 give each one of the team a spotlight episode. I Spy Coulson, the girl in the flower dress, Sky, Fist, whatever, Simmons, the Hub, Fitz, the Well, Ward, and Repairers May.
Again, in a lot of those episodes, you could say, like, yeah, Coulson was very much at the center of I Spy. Mm-hmm. Flower Dress was Sky. Fitz, I guess you could say more Simmons than Fitz, but Fitz is a big part of that as well. And then the Hub, I would say it was more of a Fitz Ward thing, but Fitz definitely was, like, I think, more of the focus. Yeah, for sure. The Well, which we'll get into right now, Ward. And then next week. But yeah, I love that structure. And again, this is what they had to do because of the whole waiting on the Hydra reveal. But despite all that, you need to build these characters and you got to make sure people like them in the first place. And if you don't do any of this work, why would you care?
Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking of this now. Like, I do like that it was how they react on certain missions type of thing that, they try to focus on the characters. Because usually, the shows, it's more of like, here's a flashback of this character's past and everything. It's like, this is how they end up in here in this moment and all that, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, that's not really the case with this one. Like, you don't really get, unless, like, besides May in that one particular moment, you don't really get a lot of flashbacks from the main characters, really. No. Like, ever. So, that's actually really cool. And then last comment. I just love that dichotomy of Fitz teenagerish fumbling towards trying to flirt with Sky at the start of the episode, and the 100% adult and genuine "you've been beside me the whole damn time" exclamation he says to Simmons, when there is a possibility of her dying from the alien virus and thus no longer being in his life.
I think it was interesting. We talked about sometimes about how in the early episodes of the show, they weren't always quite sure of what they wanted it to be, and you get the impression that some things are kind of thrown in there to see that they would work. One of the more, I think, glaring examples of this was the whole, which I think we'll get into here. Now, May sleeping with Ward, and that was a big deal. But I think it's worth noting that at the same time, they were trying to establish a really deep connection and love between Fitz and Simmons. They would have a couple of moments where Fitz would very much clearly be attracted to Sky, and I think there was wasn't there in that scene after the flower dress? Maybe it might have been Fitz when like Fitz is trying to diminish how close Simmons and he is because he doesn't want Sky to think that he's off limits or something because of that, which is I think was cute to watch, but this I think a fair criticism is maybe they're seeing through the lines here. They're very much throwing both things out at the same time to see what I don't think personally they ever thought, what if Fitz and Sky can be a thing? No. To me, it was always going to be Fitzsimmons, and I think they knew it themselves. You could argue perhaps this was something that maybe the executives thought would be a good idea to throw out there and maybe see what the fans would respond to. Because again, in these first few episodes, the executives of ABC were very much involved.
Or maybe at the very least, maybe they would have planned like some sort of love triangle going on. But
maybe.
I think it was Fitz and Simmons from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm glad that never happened.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think we needed that.
No, we don't.
I mean, there was, I guess, a triangle of some sort, but it wasn't involving Sky. Remember Will Daniels in season 3?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was the other thing that happened. when that happened, that was so fucked up, dude. I remember when that shit was unloaded, I'm like, that, fuck you. Fuck you, Jedmo. That was a big, like, really? And we'll get into that when we get to season 3, but not right now. Anyway. Okay, so thank you all for sharing your thoughts on the episode. I look forward every week to hearing what it is that you have to say. Great insight, great commentary, and we'll catch you all in the next one. So right now,
Other worlds with names like Asgard do exist, and beings once revered as gods like
Oh my god, they're referencing it.
Thor have returned. More questions and
An enormous mess to clean up.
I'm sorry. I know this is like a really like half-assed way to like insert themselves into the movie and to seem like they're part of the larger MCU. But you got to remember, in 2013, I love this. Like, you know, it ain't that much of a what's it called? Tying in or connection or whatever, but like it was enough. It was enough.
Yeah.
It was enough. We saw Asgard right there. I mean, it wasn't new footage. It was old, reused one.
Asgardians are aliens from another planet that visited us thousands of years ago.
Or more.
And because we couldn't understand aliens, we thought they were gods.
Although Thor Love and Thunder just kind of threw that out the window right there.
Come on. You're telling me piloting an alien ship isn't on your bucket list?
I can't think of a single time.
This show somehow does a really good job of like throwing things out there in lines that end up coming true years later. Like I shared with you. That was a funny part right there when of all people, May was like, yeah, he's dreaming. But here's the thing. Sky basically telling May, don't you think it would be cool, May, that one day you end up like piloting a spaceship, as if that was not like on your bucket list? Guess what? She does in season 5 of this show. So they do that a lot. And again, it's not like they planned it from the very beginning. No, it just ends up coming to be that somehow they have the opportunity to do that. Not because there was this list of like, well, we have to get to this. No, it was like, wow, May is piloting an alien space. I think the first one that she ever piloted in space was that it was a Kree crawler in season 5.
Fitz, is that,
Definitely not from here. Another piece of the ship. What are you doing?
I like that detail because I think it's supposed to be like her being afraid of touching alien stuff now because of what happened to her.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
Good job, David. Good job.
Finally.
I didn't see that at all, but that makes sense. Perfect. Yeah, of course she would be the most like, get that away from me. I don't want to touch that after what she experienced. Right on, man. I love that little detail. I don't want to talk about the Thor movies, but what exactly did Love and Thunder throw out the window?
Well, they're saying like Thor and all the Norse gods were just aliens. Like they're not really actual gods in a sense. But Love and Thunder basically made them gods. It's like basically any gods from around the universe are real. They even like bleed gold, I think, or something like that. And they can basically disappear from existence.
I see.
If no one believes in them, or they can just be killed from a powerful weapon and everything.
I see.
Yeah, but that's basically what the MCU did, especially in the beginning. You know, they were trying to ground stuff as much as they could. With Thor specifically, they're just like, they were aliens. People thought they were gods.
These two here, I have to say, they serve their purpose, but they have to be among the least like enjoyable adversaries / villains we've had on the show. Like, I think to me, they're very much one note, and that's exactly what they're supposed to be. But like, they're just angry white people. That's all they are. Yeah, I think in the pantheon of S.H.I.E.L.D. canon, they're like, ugh, whatever.
Research. You're a scientist. You like to figure things out.
yes. with my doodads.
So you see here, Ward and Simmons have a scene together. I think the first meaningful scene they've had since he jumped out and rescued her out of the plane. And then here, you'll hear her say in a few seconds actually, that she knows that he's playing her for her to get over her fear of climbing this.
I mean, the Norway spruce is a rather fast-growing coniferous, and I know you're trying to trick me into going up, but I'm going up anyway, so...
By the way, this extra here, I don't know what he was going for, but he's hilarious. The way he just like breaks down and crying over like what happened to trees. Just wanted to point that out there. But I want to say, David, that I think this episode that we're watching right here, already 2 times we've had instances that address what Simmons has recently gone through, correct? Which you talked about how she jumped when they found an alien thing, and she just referenced it right now.
Photographic signatures match readings from Thor's hammer.
I want to say, David, this episode was supposed to actually be episode 7, but they moved it to tie in with the Dark World as it was coming out in theaters at this point. So episode 7, which we saw last week, was actually supposed to be episode 8, which is really interesting. So I think what we just pointed out right here kind of gives credence to that idea that this was supposed to be the next episode after what happened.
This forest is a protected reserve. I mean, who do they think they are?
Anything else?
You should give your buddy, the God of Thunder, a shout. He gets his power from his hammer, right? What if this is his nail to the hammer?
I already did. Director Fury told me he's off the grid.
But notice here how they had to address the fact that we can't have Thor come on the episode.
Yeah.
Because we have to maintain the cover. But really, we can't afford Chris Hemsworth. But we don't really need
here
it.
they say because he's off the grid and everything. But actually, what I would have liked there, they were like, I can't contact any of the Avengers because they think I'm dead, and they have to I have to stay dead for them.
Well, one must adapt, Elena. Recent events have thrown us all for a loop.
Well, this is another instance where other named characters have the same name as future main characters. So remember that in one of the first episodes, we began with this trucker agent with the name Mac, which is funny because we know Mac as Alfonso Mac McKenzie later on in the series. This girl's name apparently is Elena, and Yo-Yo Elena Rodriguez, later on. Interesting.
Oh, yeah. A powerful army. Fierce army it was.
You have to understand that this whole thing, this whole scene, is really telling us that he was there firsthand, because a lot of the language that he's using, oh yeah, a fierce army it was, that's not how a historian would phrase
Or a
that.
scientific attribute we've yet to discover.
Analytically minded and pretty as a peach.
The warrior in the story?
Did you see that? Did you see that there?
Yeah. Oh my god.
Not exactly subtle there, Fitz. You're like, he was just trying to like scoot that over. Like he got so, what was it, unnerved by somebody else trying to flirt with Gemma.
Well, I mean, it does stand to reason to search near Viking raid routes, doesn't it? No, there have been...
Notice how Coulson's already like... Coulson is an amazing agent, and I sometimes we don't appreciate that enough, but he already like catching so many things like were like the pen that he had, and then also the look that he gave Randolph right there about like, what? And then of course, look.
Or am I gonna have to save Simmons' ass? Again.
I was waiting for that line. Again.
This actually makes a lot of sense that this would come before the episode we saw last week, because remember how last week Fitz was very just like self-conscious about the fact that Ward plays the hero all the time, and especially that moment that he went out and saved Gemma in Fitz. So I feel like I wonder what it would play like if you watched Fitz, then The Well, and then The Hub, because they've already made like 3 or 4 references to Fitz.
Hey, what? You should be more careful.
I'm fine.
But of course, there are some things that don't quite gel, because I want to say that the ending of this episode 8 is connected to the beginning of episode 9 in repairs, where May and Ward are waking up in the hotel room. So I think at one point, what was going to happen is they had to rework the some scenes here and there to make sure that 8 would be 7, then 7 would be 8.
Okay, then.
It's funny because that's one of those twists that when I watched it, I never saw coming.
Yeah.
Like, what? An Asgardian?
Please don't tell anyone.
I had no clue.
Yeah, same. That was actually quite clever. Like the whole time I wouldn't have guessed it. But I guess looking back on it, I'm like, there's some subtle things here and there, but still, it's a bit of a swing.
Get some tissue samples, maybe some bodily fluids. We could find out. Or we could just ask him, Weird Al.
Which, again, Simmons has a thing with cadavers and dissections, and she will, as a matter of fact, dissect that line, disco. Hilarious. One of the scariest things ever. But Simmons will have an opportunity to dissect many things. One of the more memorable moments in season 6, remember she's torturing some alien by teasing about how all the different ways she would dissect him. Like they have him hanging upside down on the Zephyr.
I just sent you a picture.
Where the hell did you pull that from?
I just found it on, I think it might have been on Instagram, but I was just like, no freaking way. I gotta send this to you.
That would be funny if that was anywhere near true. So
I was a mason. I broke rocks. For thousands of years.
Tell me about yourself, Scourge.
Well, my dad was a stonemason, my mum was a seamstress.
I'll stop you there.
I don't think in hell that's a remote possibility, but just thinking about that was like, that's interesting.
That'd be cool.
That's hilarious. Thank you for sending that. I had no idea someone actually
caught that.
Did that.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Dang, the sound effects on that was just
right.
intense.
Honestly, I think the saddest thing about all this is that, looking back on it, Ward is just a fucking deluded individual.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here he is thinking, like, in his idea, his older brother forced him to throw his younger brother into the well, when in reality it was Ward that did it himself, and he likes to think that it was his older brother Christian that made him do that because he can't live with it otherwise. It's just so gross and disgusting.
Yeah.
But they also don't really... I think the part that doesn't necessarily work that well here for Ward is they still don't really get into the details. You know, it's like, okay, this dramatic thing happened. And of course, they do that purposefully because that'll come into play. And they can't really get too deep into this character because they know, well, Hail Hydra. So...
Please! Help me! Help me! But he's gonna...
Not yet. Throw him the rope, and I'll throw you in there too.
So this is a lie.
Yeah.
This never happened, as we will come to find out in the next 2 seasons.
Also, earlier I said, like, I don't think they ever do flashbacks on on any of the characters. Okay, I was wrong.
Well, for the first time here, they do.
Yeah.
Later on in the show, that'll become more common.
At least though,
flashbacks they aren't used here, but later in seasons they are.
At least with this one though, there's a reason to it because they explain to the staff is unlocking that and everything. For most shows that I see, it's just sort of they just show it automatically to give you an idea of the character.
I mean, the fact that May can hold all 3 of those as one really just goes to show you how
she could have handled that Infinity Gauntlet.
Yes, but how much of a damaged person she is that it's not getting to her, you know? Because they're going to ask her right now, like, how are you able to do that? See that darkest memory. And then she said, oh, I love this right here. Am I dead? And then one final hit on Gemma. You're easily the most beautiful thing I've seen in...
You're easily the most beautiful thing I've seen in 1,000 years.
That's sweet. But when May says, because I see it every day.
Didn't freeze. You just weren't up for the idea of putting your hand inside somebody else's chest.
Oh yeah, another thing about how this episode was supposed to be after Fitz, she has not spoke to her parents about the events that happened in that episode. So a lot of the stuff that we see here is supposed to come directly after Fitz.
Also, I like the little moment with the three. I mean, it happens in a lot of the episodes, but I just keep liking them always together and just telling like, oh, this crazy thing happened, and everything. Just shows like.
And how? How did you hold all three?
Because I see it every day.
We say Simmons and Daisy are sisters, but I mean Fitz is also a brother to Daisy too.
No, yeah, for sure, yeah. No, yes, very much so. They're the kids. So seeing scenes of all three of those just hanging out, they're good stuff. Good scenes to see.
I know that look. You're tempted. Now, what is it you want to see?
You and I have a lot in common. We've both been stabbed in the heart.
So while some things are obviously like a follow-up to Fitz, this, I think, works better after we've seen last episode, The Hub, where Coulson begins to question a lot of the things with him being involved in S.H.I.E.L.D.
I'm wondering if it's time to start over somewhere else.
Nice beach.
I always enjoyed the character of Randolph. I think he's a nice inclusion here, and I really loved when he came back in season 3. He is one of these characters that comes back.
Does everything just roll off your back?
No. If it helped, I'd rage all the time, but it doesn't.
I find that's a very helpful mindset to keep, right? Like, not everything is gonna be easy enough to roll off your back, but I think that's what makes Skye so personable. Is like, look, this isn't about her, but every moment we see all the characters, well, Skye specifically, I think to me what almost immediately like attracted me to her character was the big heart that she has. You know, she has such a humanity to her, and I think it's really sweet that we know that she gets that from both of her parents, but more so her father. Which is funny because when we meet her father, like, he's kind of a monster, but really in the end, he has the biggest heart, and that's who she got it from. So, and now we've arrived at this. I remember when this happened, and I'm like, what?
Yeah. I don't like it. Like, it's just,
no.
I like that explanation of it later on, obviously, and everything. But it's just like,
I think they had to make an explanation because they realized it was a kind of a mistake. So later on, they do a good enough job of like rationalizing why certain things happened. But let's be real here. I think this was always one of those clear mistakes that was made. And in the moment, I feel all of us were like, "What?
Yeah,
where the hell did this come from?" Did I hate it from the beginning? I mean, I wasn't angry about it, but I didn't like it.
I wasn't angry about it, but I just felt awkward about it, like, afterwards.
Right?
I don't know why. It just it felt awkward for some reason.
Yeah. And here I wonder if perhaps why did it feel awkward? Is it because she's older and he's younger? I hope it wasn't because we feel like... I don't think it was because of that, right?
No, it wasn't. I don't know. It's just something about it. Like, I don't know what it was. I think maybe because I wanted them to stay a team. Besides Fitz and Simmons, I wanted everyone else to stay a team, maybe? I don't know. Or maybe I just, again, didn't, like, see anything between the two. I don't know.
I mean, I don't see anything between Ward and May. Never. I guess looking back on it, they tried to rationalize it with the fact that May was attracted to Ward only because he appealed in the sense that he felt detached in the same way that she did with her past.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe because it was just so sudden too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like...
yeah.
I mean, you can probably explain it in this moment because they just both went through something kind of traumatic in a sense, and it's just... Technically, their emotions are building up. Like, you could have rationalized it as that in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But, there was no build-up to that. So
no, it came out of nowhere. And I think it would have been fine if it had just been a one-night stand, but it kind of kept going. It was more than a one-night stand.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a whole episode later on in the season where May ends up looking like she may have felt some things for him and he felt some things for her. And so it would be fine, I think, if it was just left as a one-night stand, but they don't leave it at that. There are actual hints throughout the next few episodes where, like, maybe they did have some kind of feelings.
Yeah.
But as fans... you don't buy it.
Yeah, and also, like, I didn't like that moment where it was after they find out he was Hydra. No. This is, like, in season 3 or something. Like, this is when, basically, like, this was the limit for Coulson. Being like, we have to fucking get Ward now. And he actually, like, and so he's talking to everyone who, like, has ever been around him and everything. And when he gets to May, he's like, hey, I'm gonna ask a lot of questions here. Like, and all that. And it's just like, I gotta dig deep to get some information about this guy. And I just kind of didn't like that moment too, because it was just kind of like, that's personal. So I don't know. It's just, yeah, something about this just, it did not work for me at all. Weird.
No. It is kind of uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's just, I think it's best if we left it at that, because it's not as if that's the last we'll ever discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
So now what we do, we talk. Well, let me just say this. I thought that this episode was perfectly fine. I thought it was like any episode of S.H.I.E.L.D., enjoyable, entertaining. I think the stuff that it tried to do with the Asgardian connections was cool. That's what I was mostly here for. Didn't like the whole May Ward thing at the end. I don't really feel like the Ward stuff here was all that much really explicit. It was kind of had to be muddled in a way. So I think this is one of the weaker episodes, clearly. But I'm one of these, but it's still a perfectly entertaining and enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
But I just feel like when you compare this to The Hub or Fitz, Girl in the Flower, I don't think, I feel like to me this...
Yeah.
Eight episodes in, this might be the weakest of the whole 8 that we've seen so far.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
But then also, like, to talk about some of the strengths of this episode, I really do like that they keep bringing up stuff from Coulson. That he really wants to know, like, what happened to me. Like, this isn't normal. And I just like in every episode that he just doesn't feel comfortable with what happened to him. And then also the other strengths, which is the thing that people always complain about, Daisy. Like, she always is just bringing the comedy into these episodes. For some reason, some people didn't like that.
It hits. I'm sorry, but it hits, and she's playing it very well. And they also, again, they're not wasting time. Like, there are things that are progressing slowly, but they're progressing. You know, we get a brief hint at May, you know, and what happened in Bahrain there. Like, I see it every day. We see some movement with Simmons, you know, trying to get over what happened to her and, like, moving forward from her traumatic occurrence that happened recently. So things are moving. They're not standing still entirely. But I feel like maybe of all the episodes we've had thus far, this might be the one that counts the most as villain of the week.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's where we're at, or flavor of the week, if you will. So I took a peek at some of the reviews. They're not kind. So this one from, what's it called? David Sims, not you, David Francisco. David Sims, who's reviewing for the AV Club. Man, he is on a tear. He gave the episode a D+. So, this is what he says. Okay, S.H.I.E.L.D., I'm at my wit's end with you, and I think I've been very patient so far. Give the show time to breathe, I'd argue. It needs a few weeks to flesh everything out, like any Joss Whedon show. Well, I've had enough. This is the most expensive new show on TV, and it's set in the fascinating, fun Marvel Cinematic Universe full of great characters, 60 years of story ideas, and so on and so forth. This week we crossed over with Thor: The Dark World, a legitimately awesome romp of a movie that had me spellbound in the theater from start to finish. I'm going to stop right here. I am gonna stop right here because do you see what I mean about how much of rose-colored, rose-tinted glasses people had? And look, I don't exclude myself from that. I very much remember having a blast watching The Dark World in theaters because you know what? It was fine. It was fun. And everybody in that first weekend was like, wow, this is so much fun. It's a Marvel Thor movie. Yay. And then weeks later, oh, that wasn't very good. And then years later, wow, that movie sucks. And this, the juxtaposition of him about to roast this episode by praising one of the worst movies the MCU had ever done. Still, to this day, he says, a legitimately awesome romp of a movie that had me spellbound in a theater from start to finish. I hate to break it to you. The Well might be the weakest episode of the series thus far, but it's still miles better than The Dark World. And look, you can say, from a cinematography standpoint or a visual standpoint, that's not fair because the movie is going to have better. Yeah, sure. But I'm talking about from a characterization standpoint, which to me is always the most important thing. That was funny. I had to stop right there. Okay, so he continues. What happens in this episode? No, what happens in the episode to live up to all this promise? I don't know. There's a magic staff, Asgardian, that gets stolen by a couple of roadies from a Swedish hair metal band. It gives them super strength, and it also makes them super aggressive. Although maybe they're already aggressive since apparently they belong to a Norse paganist hate group, which confusingly doesn't hate the Norse or pagans, but just people in general, I suppose. The team has to track them down, mostly by cleaning up wreckage and chatting up how handsome Thor is, a character who does not appear in the episode. It's okay that Thor didn't make it in his own crossover episode, though, because the mighty goddess of war, Sif, is here instead. What's that? No Sif. That didn't age well, did it? No. What about Volstagg, Heimdall, Frandl? No, okay, fine. No one from the movie, but maybe we can have someone from Thor's comics expand the universe outward a little more? Great, you've cast someone, an Asgardian for our heroes to tangle with. The Asgardian is played by Peter MacNeil. He's an Ally McBeal in 24 Numbers and Ghostbusters 2 and the like. He's from those. Love McNeil. He's an Emmy award-winning actor. Would he be my first choice to play an Asgardian? Well, no. It's definitely a letdown that he's in a suit the whole episode and has it. Okay, I guess I can see. I thought it was a cool little twist. We talked about that already. But, do you see how they're telling on themselves when he says he was in a suit the whole episode? Did we need to see a costume?
No.
But he wanted to see a costume. That very much speaks to what he wants out of the show. Oh, we're told, in a shocking twist, that he was an Asgardian warrior. A berserker soldier who did all kinds of cool shit. But a while ago. Not recently. Now he just sits around. This show cannot be this boring when its characters are so bland. You have to give me something, S.H.I.E.L.D. You're giving me nothing. The Well focuses a lot of its energy on Grant, giving us a haunting glimpse into his past, but it's not especially haunting or at all clear with what we're looking at. And to be fair, he's right. It wasn't very clear what was happening there with the Well. And Brett Dalton continues to not be up to the challenge of playing a character we might be remotely interested in. That's fair, I guess. I don't know. I always did feel like the hate that Brett Dalton got for playing the character that he was told to play, I never got. Mm-hmm. I get why people don't like him or like him as much, but the hatred, to me, it just speaks, it reeks of like people needing for easy targets to point to and say, this is why the show is bad. So they keep picking on him specifically. David Sims continues, there's a hint of flirtation with Sky late in the game, but the sparks aren't exactly flying. The one vaguely interesting moment is between him and Melinda, who has a well of darkness deeper than his own. But I'll be surprised if their dalliance actually leads to the show anywhere interesting. Nicely staged though it may be, it feels more like it is something for the show to distract from how boring it is. Damn. It's too bad. If things were pointed in a more interesting direction, I'd be more taken with the episode's ending. A flash to Tahiti that cuts to Coulson awakening as if it were from a nightmare, even though nothing untoward transpires in his fantasy. It's a creepy moment, but it's also rehashing material we're well acquainted with at this point. Tahiti, it's a magical place. He died and he came back to life. Blah, blah, blah. Let's wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen. It's far less interesting than you seem to think it is. I really wish I had something to say about the main plot this week. The set pieces were dumb and embarrassingly small scale. Even when Grant took out a room with the staff powers, it felt like a level above an A-Team episode. A Thor discussion was head-slappingly stupid since it just drew further attention to how lame this show is compared to the awesomely expensive Marvel movies. The Swedish park rangers talking to each other in English, even with no one else around, felt like something that would happen on a TV show in the 1990s. We can deal with subtitles for 2 minutes, ABC. It's 2013.
I guess. Sure. Whatever.
What the fuck was that comment?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just, you're really...
He's just, yeah.
Just stretching, trying to come up with complaints here, yeah.
My patience is gone. I officially find this show a chore to watch and have no idea if it can improve. The cast is largely game. The budget is there and the writing and talent is there too, at least on paper. Fix this show, ABC, or watch it go down as the most high-profile bust since Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. Well, David, looks like you were proved wrong. Because that wasn't exactly the case, was it? Mm-hmm. 7 seasons. 36 episodes. So, that was a pretty scathing review. Let me see what we have here on the next one. Let's go to IGN. Eric Goldman. All right. Here's what he says. I was ready to be mad at this episode. Really mad. Because let's face it. The entire promotional campaign for this episode was a big lie. And that may be true. I think that's, if I remember correctly. At the very beginning, this episode had nothing to do with Thor the Dark World. They could have done this episode at any point in the season with the same Asgardian connection. And it would have been as specifically tied, which is to say, not at all, into Thor 2. Since it all dealt with an Asgardian item that had been on Earth for 1,000 years and wasn't at all part of what happened in that movie. I'd like to think that this is just a case of a promo, people going wild, because I could see this episode airing this week with the same little tie-in it actually did to have Thor 2 and thinking that was pretty cool if they hadn't advertised it as a follow-up. But okay, let me move on, lest you'll think my rage is influenced by a berserker staff. Jacob and Petra were completely empty villains. Though seeing Aaron Way made me think about how much I miss alphas again. The whole Norse paganist hate group sounds pretty funny, even if it's a real thing, which is it? But what helped make this episode work was Peter McNeil, or McNichol. Is it McNeil or McNichol? Let's just say McNichol. Peter McNichol, the great character actor known for everything from Ghostbusters 2 to 24. Let us never forget Addams Family Values. Was a lot of fun as Dr. Elliot Randolph, an expert in Norse mythology and Asgardians who turned out to be an actual Asgardian. That reveal was a really good one that gave us the most powerful character we've seen on the show so far, in a commendably unassuming form. The staff affecting Ward in the way that it did was interesting, and I wish even more was done with it. I don't know why this show continues to be so secretive about so much. This was the episode in which we should have simply learned everything about Ward. But there's a reason why we can't, folks. But it's fair to think this way at this moment, but there's a reason we can't. As far as what happened to his younger brother, instead, we were given pieces, seeing that a cruel kid apparently threw him down a well, and that Ward tried to save his brother, but, well, we don't know what happened next. We still don't know what happened to either of the brothers. Those scenes were certainly harrowing, but why not just tell us the whole story so we can understand Ward more completely? Because it's fake. Meanwhile, I'm sure those who hate Skye did enjoy Ward yelling at her. That's what you're here to do. Talk and talk and talk. Yikes. And Eric doesn't hate Skye, but he's just like saying that because at this point, the Skye hate was like so, up to here. It's like, well, I'm sure they got a kick out of seeing this. Which, man, that's such a... Okay, I'm going to leave it there. However, I continue to like Ward as a character. He's the Boy Scout, which is always tough to make interesting, but I think they're adding some nice layers to him. Even the opening, where he was so kind of helpful with a scared Simmons, was a solid touch. There was some very funny bits in this one. Coulson had a great moment, expertly played by Clark Gregg with his, let's see what we can dig up, see what I did there. And I love McNichol exclaiming, "No, I don't know Thor." Plus, while she still hasn't had a big spotlight episode, May certainly got some good action at the end of this hour. And yes, I totally went for a bad double entendre there, sorry. But seeing her pick up that staff, no jokes, and kick ass was very cool as she maintained her calm self, explaining later to Ward that whatever her own trauma is, yes, more secrets, she lives with every day, rather than burying it like he does. I'm going to stop here and say, look, this is, I think to me, the criticism that I am most willing to entertain, in that there's a lot that they really are not clear about these characters, like with May or with Ward. And I think there's a lot of reasons to that. I think the more obvious reason with Ward is they're saving him for a big reveal in a few episodes from now. And so this is what this is. And then with May, I think at this point in the show, they're still not quite sure what that story is, but they're trying to give May something, and so they keep reminding us about this. However, it's not the best timing, right? That this is happening at the exact same time as another character is also mysteriously being kept under wraps. So I can definitely understand that critique for sure, more than any of the other ones. But all of that leading up to Ward following her into her hotel room, did not see that one coming. S.H.I.E.L.D. had played a little bit with potential love triangle with Fitz, Skye, and Ward, and maybe a love square if you think Simmons has romantic feelings towards Fitz. But this was a very entertaining and, well, frankly, pretty sexy swerve to take. And yes, it helped make the character dynamics among this group more complicated and interesting. That's fair. By the way, I know, we have no idea if they actually hooked up or, discussed which next generation system to buy over drinks. I'm going to assume it was a hookup until we're told otherwise. Yeah, it was pretty clear what it was. Yeah, he was right. As for that final scene, I really want to get some actual information on Coulson soon, rather than reminders that something is off. But yeah, I did enjoy the dollhouse reference. Did I fall asleep for a little while? And do wonder if we should take that to mean Coulson could have been programmed or if it was just a fun in-joke. His overall feelings. Some notable flaws were still present this week, including the we must present everyone's backstory so slowly as revealed mystery. But there was also a lot of fun and excitement in the well. A great guest star was given a really nice twist to their character, and we got our first inner team hookup in it, but in a completely surprising manner that was much more interesting than what had been teased before. But yeah, super lame to say in any way this follows up to The Dark World in any significant manner. So, David, we got two reviews there. IGN, the one that I just read, and then AV Club before. Really, I would say divergent points of view. I think Eric very much, he likes the show. And he likes watching the show. David Sims, on the other hand, seems to hate his life having to watch this show. And I think you can tell the difference in those reviews.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can understand it in the moment and everything, but like when you rewatch it and everything, he's complaining about the villains out there just kind of like bland and everything. I much prefer this than what I've been seeing a lot lately with other TV shows, and not just like, you know, something like this with as a bad guy of the week or something like that. I see this in procedurals like with the Doctors ones or something like that, where like the character of the week, I guess you can say, like the main characters already know that whatever is happening, it's also happening to like the main characters, if that makes any sense. So like let's say, just to say like one of the main characters is dealing with a breakup, then with a procedural like a doctor show or something, the patient that they're dealing with is dealing with a divorce or something like that. Or, you know, and it's just like they're like every single show I'm seeing, like they're just getting meta with it, where they just know like, let me bring you like my friend of mine, he can handle you or something like that. And so I much prefer this what they did with Shield, where it's just kind of like they're just there and it's perfectly fine, you know?
Right.
So I don't know. Again, and in the moment I can understand it, but when rewatching it, I much prefer this.
Yeah, I think to me overall, this is one of the episodes that I think lives the least in my mind. I remember when I first watched it, I was like very much entertained. I had seen the Dark World the week before, so I was like, oh, cool. Here's a little like add on to whatever that was. Not really, but thematically, I guess you could say. But I feel like the fact that it is muddled by the need of being so secretive with Ward's backstory, on top of the fact that it's focused on Ward, who, when you know down the line that was a complete lie, makes it harder to be invested in any of this with the whole context of the show in mind. So there's that. But was this garbage? Was this like a terrible episode of television? Was this like embarrassing or like amateur hour or like cause for concern of like, I think if anything, I don't think the thing with May and Ward comes close to even that. It's a swerve. And on some level you got to respect it. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? And I don't think it worked in the end, but the show recognized that it didn't work and then it moved on. And then it's a distant memory. Thankfully. But moments like that, just first of all, this is a perfectly fine, entertaining, enjoyable episode of the show. Fine. But very evidently the weakest of the whole 8 that we have been talking about. And that whole thing at the end with May and Ward is probably the biggest example we have of them literally just trying things because they were just unsure of themselves. You got to keep in mind that these episodes were being written and filmed at the same time that the media is talking about this show's ratings just cratering, and they're hearing all the hate coming from fans, and also they're getting pressured by executives at Marvel and ABC, and so it's like, I can't imagine being in that kind of a situation where they're just getting all this kind of like contradictory feedback and not any of it is helpful. And so what happened this episode, I think it's a miracle how much of the show this era holds up. That it speaks to how good of a team they were, that they were able to make these episodes as good as they were, considering all of the voices that were coming from them. You know, I don't think it was until like after the first 10 had aired, and they had basically one of their producers had demanded to talk to ABC and tell them to back off, because we want to, if this is going to die, we need to make this our own thing. And so, yeah, I think you can very much clearly tell that the May Ward thing was something they were trying for a few weeks, and they realized this isn't working, and they tried to write their way out of quickly as possible, and that didn't work itself either. So it's to me, if anything, the May Ward stuff is probably one of the biggest blemishes, if you will, of the history of this show. That just flat out does not work.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Anything else, David, that we haven't said about this one before we end off today?
No, I think that's it. Hopefully next episode we can be a little bit more clear as to why we didn't like.
It's like, look, it's just like what? Like, oh, you mean May Ward thing?
The May Ward thing.
Well, it's because like right now we're at the phase where it just kind of happens, and it comes out of nowhere too. And I think all that we're given right now, well, actually at this moment we're given no reason to think at all why these two would be attracted. I guess you can infer that perhaps because they both, you know, touch the Berserker staff, and they both have like secretive like backstories that have haunted them. I guess that's the intent, but the episode didn't really do a good enough job of like articulating that, and I don't feel that gets any better the weeks it goes by. So it's like, it's just a weird thing that comes out of left field, and because we know where it goes, we can say in the end it feels like a mistake.
Yeah. Okay.
But we will obviously continue. We have to address it as it goes.
Yeah.
So the next episode, it might get into it. It might not get into it. We'll see. But I think ultimately overall, as a net positive, we can say this is a mistake, and we can probably describe our feelings more clearly as the weeks go on by. But I think the point that should, you know, be remembered here is that we are individuals here that happen to enjoy any and all episodes of this show, and this is no exception. Yes, of the 8 that we've done so far, I feel pretty confident in saying this is my least favorite of the 8 that we've done so far. But did I hate it? Did I hate my time here? Did I hate what they were doing? No. It was just fine.
Yeah.
And every show is going to have a fine episode. So, what more can you say? Thank you all so much for being here, for listening, and for watching. Whatever you have to add on to what we said, please go down in the comments below and you add on your feelings. Were we wrong? Did you feel like you agreed with what we said? Are we not giving the May Ward thing enough credit? Perhaps you're individuals who liked that move, and you have your own reasons for why it worked. And if you do, please come on the video and leave it down below, and we will have a really interesting time reading those comments off next time. But until then, thank you all for watching. Stay under our red spotlight for more content here and more, and we will see you all next time for the 9th episode, Repairs. Bye.
Bye.